Okay guys, so I can't describe this as anything other than a nightmare. You saw the blue screen at the end of the last video, and that was because there's some guys here working on networking and somehow they shorted out my computer. And now that that was fixed, I did the lecture all over again and then somehow managed to delete it. So we're gonna try this all over again one more time and hope that it works. Seeing as you guys are going to be here in just a couple hours at this point. So I believe we left off. We were drawing the price line over to the y-axis. We had already dropped from MR equals MC down to quantity. We take it over to price, we label it P1. We drop down to ATC, where that line intersects ATC, we draw it over. You could label it A1 over here on the y-axis for your ATC cost, or average total cost. And the area of the green rectangle is our profit. All right, that is price minus ATC times quantity. This is all exactly the same way we did it for regular monopoly. So you do it the same way for monopolistic competition. That being said, we're going to take a quick look here at loss. It works the same way. Find MR equals MC. You draw a dotted line to the x-axis and label quantity. You draw a dotted line up to price and take that over to the y-axis. That's your price. Take it up to ATC, draw another line over, you can label that A1 or A2. The red rectangle is your loss, and you have the loss because your demand curve is below your average total cost curve. Anytime your price is lower than your cost, then you're losing money. That's not a good thing. Again, this is all laid out. It's price minus ATC times quantity. All the stuff is in the order you would need to follow. So if you don't have this formula written down anywhere, I would recommend writing this down or reviewing this PowerPoint again or watching this video again. Because again, this is the exact same thing, whether it be monopolistic competition or monopoly. So you need this for both. So that was in the short run, however. In the long run, similar to perfect competition, a monopolistic competitor will only earn a normal profit and they will break even. That's where demand equals price. So looking at this graph, we see MR equals MC, dotted line down, dotted line up, dotted line across the price, but demand or price is equal to ATC at that point. What that means is that all or almost all monopolistically competitive firms will operate at break even. So in the long run, because there's so many firms and because there's few barriers to entry, other firms are going to enter if there was a profit. Remember, we have the green profit box there, it's gone. Other firms are going to leave if there are losses. We have the red loss box down here, that's gone. And in the long run, demand is going to be equal to ATC. So, sorry, I had a janitor peeking his head in. So this is the way the graph is going to look in the long run. Price equals ATC. So let me cut over here. Why does that happen? It's because it's like pure competition. Firms are going to enter. Firms are going to, if there's a profit, firms are going to leave if there's a loss. Why does this occur? It's a little bit different than perfect competition. In perfect competition, that reason was because there was extra supply. All right, all of the producers are producing exactly the same good, and so when they produce exactly the same good, then supply changes. For a monopolistic competitor, that is an issue of demand. All right, Let's use Cottage Inn as an example. Cottage Inn is a fairly small regional pizza chain compared to the national chains like Pizza Hut and Domino's and Little Caesars. So, Cottage Inn looks at what Pizza Hut's doing and they say, we want to expand. They expand their business. They're selling it maybe based on their sauce. Our sauce is better than Pizza Hut sauce. What do they get? They get more customers. Why? Because they are a substitute to Pizza Hut. And therefore, the reason that demand is what's changing is because as more monopolistic competitors enter the industry, then they are offering substitutes. And so our demand curve is what's going to shift. If you have profits, the demand curve is going to shift to the left as more and more competitors enter the industry and offer substitutes, which will drive the demand for your good down. If there are losses, firms will leave the industry, which means there'll be less and less substitutes for your good, which means demand for your good will shift to the right. So again, for monopolistic competitive firms, you see a demand shift. So if you have a profit, demand is going to shift to the left until it meets ATC. If you have a loss, demand is going to shift to the right until it meets ATC. And it is all an issue of substitutes. Now, there is one complication that makes this, again, slightly different from a perfectly competitive firm, which is there are some firms that have such differentiation that they can maintain profits in the long run. For example, it could be related to their brand name, it could be related to having the best location, it could be related to having more barriers to entry. The example that we give here is the Hilton in downtown Chicago or the Renaissance Center in downtown Detroit. You can't beat their differentiation. What is their differentiation? Their location. If you are the Chicago Hilton right at the south end of the Chicago Loop, all right, there's no one else that can beat you. All right, you can open a hotel anywhere in Chicago and it's going to be very hard to beat the Chicago Hilton. You could open a hotel anywhere in Detroit and it's going to be very tough to beat the Renaissance Center overlooking the river, probably the best views in Detroit. You can't compete with that. So those kind of firms have a built-in competitive advantage based on their differentiation that allows them to maintain a certain amount of profit. Most firms can't do that. It doesn't mean that firms aren't going to be in that industry. There are still thousands and thousands of hotels around the country, but most of them don't operate at a long run profit. They just are operating at break even or a normal profit. There's very few firms that are able to maintain that profit, and it's almost like they have a bit of monopoly in them. So it's more like perfect competition, but there's an element of monopoly. Only a few more slides here. First slide, monopolistic competitors do not benefit from productive or allocative efficiency. We should know this from monopoly. The only type of firm that experiences allocative and productive efficiency are perfectly competitive firms. In a monopolistic competition, price does not equal, it's greater than minimum ATC, therefore there's no productive efficiency. Price is also greater than marginal cost, so there's no allocative efficiency. If you look at your graphs, you would see that, and that's just the way it is, period. You can't really avoid the fact that anything other than a perfectly competitive firm is somewhat inefficient. Now, monopolistic competition should be more efficient than a monopoly, and we'll take a look at that graph in a second and see that in fact it's probably a lot closer, but it's still not quite efficient. And here is that graph. Let me cut in front of the screen here for a second. So what we've got here, this is our graph of the long run. All right, we see demand barely touches, it's really just tangent to ATC. Touches it in 1 point, that's where MR equals MC. All right, and then it continues onward. It looks like we're producing at a cost that's pretty close to minimum ATC. All right, we're so close that we really can't tell the difference looking at that graph. And so we have this little bubble over to the other graph. Now hopefully you've been looking at your graph sheet as we've been going through this. I forgot to mention that at the beginning, but these graphs are all on the sheet that you have. And if you look at it this way, you can tell where MR equals MC, the price is slightly higher than minimum ATC, which means our costs are slightly higher than minimum ATC. Again, we don't have productive efficiency. And we're also producing less output than we would where MC, or marginal cost, equals ATC. All right, that lower production is called excess capacity. What it means is that the industry could produce more, but they don't. All right, and they are slightly inefficient. Now you can't really tell, again, from looking at this graph. It's pretty close, but when you look at it here, you can definitely tell price is higher than it should be and output is lower than it should be. And that, again, means that we are inefficient, just like we were with Monop. I believe that might be our last slide. There is one more, but we don't need to go over that one. So, here's the thing, things to remember for your quiz tomorrow. Number one, you need to know the graphs. All right, you need to know the short run graphs where you can turn a profit or a loss. You need to know the difference there. If you have a profit, it means that your demand curve is above ATC. If you have a loss, it means your demand curve is below ATC. You also need to know to label everything on your graph, your quantity, your price. You should probably get in the habit of labeling the average cost as well. I don't think you need to have that on the AP exam, but it doesn't hurt anything. You need to know where to shade profit boxes and where to shade the loss boxes or rectangles. You also need to know this long run graph, the one on the left here. That's where MR equals MC at demand, where demand equals ATC. So it is a normal profit or it is break even. You need to know that the reason that happens is because demand will shift in the long run. It will shift because of the presence of more substitutes if it is a profit situation, or because there are less substitutes because firms are leaving a loss situation. You should know what that term excess capacity means. The industry could produce more, but it's not. And let's think here. You should know that the demand curve is more horizontal or elastic for monopolistically competitive firms than it is for monopoly. Again, it's not perfectly horizontal. That's a perfectly competitive firm. But it is more horizontal and it is more elastic than your firm's, your perfectly monopoly firms. So that's pretty much it. Remember, your quiz on this is tomorrow. Feel free to review this video, feel free to check out the PowerPoint, and feel free to email me with any questions you have tonight.